We're going to give another minute or two for some people to jump on. So we'll start the presentation in about a minute. All right, we can get started here. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Francesco, and I'm part of the investor relations team here at IotaComm, and we're super excited to have you on the investor webinar to share more about our recent progress, our vision, and what's ahead for the company. Today's session is going to be about an hour. First, we'll kick off with a 15-minute presentation from our CEO, Terrence DeFranco. He's going to walk you through the investor deck and share some important business updates. After that, we're going to open up to Q&A, and we're going to try and answer as many questions as we can. If you'd like to submit a question, there should be a Q&A tab on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. We'll keep an eye out for those questions throughout the presentation as well as after. So even if you have questions while Terrence is talking, please put them in there. With that, I'll hand it over to our CEO, Terrence DeFranco, to start the presentation.
Great, Francesco, thanks so much. It's really wonderful to be here with all of you. This is the first of what may be a few webinars that we do in relation to the crowdfunding. We've done a number of town halls and presentations before, but this is the first one I'm doing around crowdfunding. And so I welcome everyone. If this is the first time that you're hearing our story, we're inviting you, both to a webinar, but also we're inviting you into a journey. IotaComm, represents truly a transformative journey that we've been on, and in some cases even going back as far as 10 years ago when we first started aggregating our spectrum portfolio. But the point here, though, is that where you're investing is that this journey of transformation is now turning into a journey toward disruption. So think about it in terms of companies like Amazon or Netflix or Tesla and the things that they've done to truly disrupt the markets that they're in. That truly is the path that we believe that IotaComm is on. So I want to thank everyone for joining. For many of our existing investors, if you're on, thanks for coming on, and thanks for all of your support. To my team as well, thank you. And also to the Dealmaker team, this has been a tremendous experience. You guys do such a great job. So let's dive into it. IotaComm is based in Pennsylvania and RTP, North Carolina, and we're setting out to build the next nationwide wireless network. So when you think of companies like AT&T and Verizon, we use them for our cellular communications. It really is not much different. The difference between us and them, number one, we're starting here in the 21st century, where they started many decades ago. The other thing is that we're actually building this network with the demand from the market already there. So in some ways, you can look at this as really a quick way, if you weren't around back then to invest when those pioneers began, you now have an opportunity to do so with a company like ours. And the beauty is that the markets are really ready for connectivity like this. The thing that we do differently is that we connect things rather than people. And so this is a purpose-built network. And if you're familiar with the Internet of Things, that's really the category that we fall into. The addressable markets we're attacking are in the commercial, utility, and government assets. So just think about buildings and cities as I explain more about what we do. And the idea is really to build that connectivity business with an eye toward building a data business. When you think about some of those businesses now that are all building around the future of artificial intelligence and metaverse, you need the data. And so our positioning as a network carrier that's uniquely positioned to be able to gather data, then also using that data to drive decisioning, to drive value, that really is what IotaComm represents. And so I'm going to run through some of the investment highlights, and then we'll dive into those in a little bit more detail as we go through the presentation. But the first thing, and this really makes us very unique as an early stage company, is that we own a portfolio of FCC licensed radio spectrum. And so that might not mean really a lot to you, but let me give you a little bit of context. Any company, whether it's a communications company or a media company that broadcasts signals over wireless connectivity, owns licensed spectrum. And so AT&T, Verizon, I referred to those, but even the media companies that transmit wireless signals, one of the key assets that they leverage is FCC licensed radio spectrum. The FCC licensed radio spectrum portfolio that we have covers the entire United States and has a value of about $100 million. On top of that, what we've also done is develop the groundbreaking technology to actually turn those radio waves into technology that's usable. So think of LTE, that type of standard that's using the radio waves for your cellular communication. We've actually developed that technology, and that part of our transformation is complete. The business operates very differently than some of those cellular companies, where we actually have a full bundled model, not just around the connectivity, but also the data that we're capturing. And so end users really get to benefit from a terrific business model that we have. And I'll dive more into it and show you why it's great for customers, but it's also great for us as shareholders in the company. The other thing that's really exciting is the fact that these markets that we're going after, while fairly nascent and untapped, we are opening the opportunities for those untapped markets, but they're huge. The commercial building market in the United States is over 100 billion square feet. When you think about the complexity around commercial buildings and around cities and things like that, they are ripe for disruption, and the market opportunity for us is massive. Our management team really is who makes it all happen. You're investing in technology, you're investing in FCC licensed spectrum, but at the end of the day, especially for a company at our stage, much more critical that you're also investing in a world-class team. And then the thing that ultimately is going to pull all of that together, gets us to market, but then when it comes time for us to truly scale this business, I mean, it's a big plan, a big objective on building a nationwide network and solving all these problems. The key to it along the way, as the company is growing, is to form critical key strategic partnerships, and we've already begun doing that. So let's talk about the team a little bit. To be able to execute on this audacious goal, we had to assemble a terrific team, and this is really the foundation of our leadership in the business. Without going through all of the backgrounds of each person, feel free to please ask questions about the team as we get into the Q&A. But I will tell you that this is a team that has been through that journey that I was talking about before. And there's a passionate, dedicated, very diverse, very smart, selective team here that also has a culture that is a winning culture. It's a culture built around a sense of purpose. And what those things align to do is really create an alignment with our shareholders. And so taking this wonderful team, building it within a great culture built around sense of purpose, but creating that shareholder alignment is ultimately what creates a world-class team. So let's turn a little bit to what this problem is that we're addressing. So like I said, the commercial building market is 100 billion square feet across the United States. The thing that really characterizes these buildings where working Americans, 90% of us, spend roughly 40% of our time. And there's one real easy way to characterize them. Generally, they're very old. And it's not just the architecture that's old. It's also the technology and an infrastructure inside them that's very old. So when you look at opportunities where there's so much demand for higher performance, higher productivity, if you're managing these buildings, like what do you do? And so it really presents a problem. And so we like to describe the problems as the 4 C's. The first one really is about the cost burden. So things like HVAC systems and smart lighting and things like that. There's some great technologies out there, but it really is still built on decades old infrastructure. And so as buildings try to evolve into the 21st century to be able to take advantage of all these new emerging technologies, one of the big impediments to it is the cost of doing so. So you have system management, system integration. It's just a lot of complexity that drives cost, but then it's also the people that are required to try to manage these complex systems as well. And so buildings, typically when they're going to make any changes to that internal technology infrastructure, they have to rely heavily on training their existing staff, bringing in consultants to be able to help mitigate it. But basically, you're trying to build new on top of the old, and it does get very, very complex. And then the final of the 3 C's is really around culture. Are there organizations that are really positioned to be able to adopt new technologies? And that's actually one of the biggest impediments to adoption of new technologies in commercial buildings. It's really the people and the culture and the attitude toward adopting. You see a lot of folks that are more early adopters. Things like cost and complexity get a little bit easier. When there's a culture and a will to do it, it does get easier. But those are really the big problems to overcome. And so as we designed our solutions on our Delphi 360 platform, the idea was, first of all, how do we take away some of the problems around cost, complexity, and culture? And the idea was, number one, we got to make this financially beneficial for the organization. You need to have strategic buy-in. You have to have tactical buy-in. Where does everyone really align? They align around getting things done a little bit easier and generating an ROI. So that's absolutely critical. Just to distinguish a little bit, we all adopt some form of these technologies in our home where we can remotely control some of our utilities or something like that. And we'll do them because it's very convenient, not necessarily because there's a financial ROI associated with it. Going into the commercial space, every application has to be justified by a tangible return on that investment. And so there's no better way to incentivize overcoming complexity and culture by driving an increased bottom line. The second thing is looking at the use around resources. And so there's a lot of debate right now around the impacts around, I'm going to combine the ESG and sustainability here. But when you look at resource management as well as in the context of sustainability, regardless of all the different debates that might happen from one cycle to another, at the end of the day, businesses are looking for much more sustainable ways to be able to run their operations. And so it's not really a political or compliance issue. It's more about achieving better results. And ultimately, what ends up happening and being able to adopt these technologies is that businesses are able to transform their building from just simply being an asset that they maintain to ultimately being an enabler and a partner in executing on their business. So I'm going to shift a little bit to the how. I'm going to start at a bird's eye level because I want to explain a couple different facets of our business, but I'm going to do so in the context of our overall strategy. So like I mentioned in the beginning, the foundation of our business is around what we refer to as our crown jewel asset, FCC licensed spectrum. This spectrum, if you're old enough to remember the Nextel phone that had a push-to-talk feature on it, this spectrum that we now control is that spectrum. And so when I talk about transformation, we've now secured that asset across the United States. And what we're doing is we're transforming the use of that asset for how Nextel used it for push-to-talk radio now to the Internet of Things. And so it's the foundational asset. It's a long-lived asset. Spectrum will be around until the final sunset, so definitely outlive all of us. And the beauty of it is that it's something that's very, very unique and something that no one can take away from us. It's extraordinarily scarce and it's worth a lot of money. So as an early investor in the company, that's one of the foundations that really differentiates us. We're not any early stage company that's trying to, take a sprint at something with some new technology and hopefully we get it done. There is a foundation of value that's built into the business. And this supports the whole connectivity part of our business. When I started in the beginning talking about nationwide wireless network, the foundational asset to ultimately being able to do that is owning this FCC licensed spectrum. It's extremely valuable, it's extremely scarce, extremely hard for our competition to be able to get their hands on. And that's why a lot of the work that's been done over the years is so critical to how we move forward. But connectivity and spectrum isn't the full story. The story is around the technology that ultimately puts it into commercial use. And so if you look at the middle part of our slide where I talk about our core capabilities, we really need to understand, this again, going back to our team, we really need to understand, number one, how do you manage networks? Number two, how do you operate the technology around that network technology? How do we position purely connectivity as an enabler for our business going forward? Because now when you look at this third aspect of our business, these data-driven insights, that's where that tangible return on investment exists. Tangible return on investment doesn't come from connectivity. Tangible return on investment comes from those data-driven insights. And so think of our connectivity with an asset that helps us become best in class around connectivity as the enabling technology that helps us deliver those data-driven insights. And so the star of the show here is really around transformative innovation. And this is where we're taking a very unique transformation, not just of that spectrum, but also in how things communicate with each other and actually put them into practice. So at the center of this slide is this dual band outdoor radio. And what it's capable of doing at its very basic is connect things wirelessly. And what makes it very different from cellular Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are actually these little features over here on the right where we talk about standard LoRaWAN. LoRaWAN is the standard that we leverage to be able to commercialize this connectivity. And so when you see those features, those are very, very different than what you would experience with cellular Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So when you compare them, why do we distinguish ourselves? We can transmit signals upwards of 10 miles. We can penetrate hard barriers much more effectively than cellular communication, Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. You could put these sensors in things like elevator shafts or electrical closets, put them in the basements of buildings, no issues in transmitting signals. And the beauty is that it does so on battery-powered devices. So these devices that we're talking about here, these are sensors, your air quality sensors, water monitor sensors. They can operate on batteries for upwards of 10 years. So very, very different than what you would experience on either cellular, Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth. And so that's kind of the standard. What IotaComm does that's different, and this is how we're leveraging that crown jewel asset, our licensed spectrum, is that we actually build even more capability, more superpowers on top of that standard. And so what it allows us to do, as you look at some of these applications on the left side of your screen, where we look at critical infrastructure types of applications, things where there's much more higher security requirements. These are the things that IotaComm can uniquely do. That gateway that's on the center of this slide, it is the only one of its kind in the world. It belongs to IotaComm. It is the big differentiator, and it captures the superpowers around our connectivity that, like I said, enables us to be able to pursue a much more lucrative data-driven business. And so that data, what does that look like? So we're capturing it through our connectivity from sensors that we install across buildings, but basically we've come up with essentially the state of the market tools around alerts, visualization tools, being able to do advanced analytics around that data. So the idea is taking the data that we're able to uniquely gather and packaging that into these data services. And this, when I talk about that return on investment, that's ultimately where all of that's captured. It's captured in a wonderful user interface that includes all advanced data analytics to really drive that return on investment. And so how we do this is really the attractive aspect to it. So capturing all of those capabilities and all of that into a business model that ultimately is another part of our disruptive story. Taking hardware, connectivity, cloud storage for data, data gathering, sensors, all the analytics, the visualization, alerts, and all of that bundled within one software as a service offering. And so we price things very easily at a penny per square foot per month. As you can see from this graphic, the possibilities are really endless. In commercial buildings, we've started with indoor air quality, but there are many applications around water use and water leak detection, asset tracking, energy management, predictive maintenance. Like, there are so many other applications that can be built on this. What we're doing right now on those initial subscriptions is getting initial data gathered on behalf of the customer and then looking for those valuable insights to keep building on top of them. The beauty of this model is that it does generate those returns on investment that we were talking about before, but in a subscription model, it's very, very different than how similar types of services are purchased by these customers. Typically, it's a capital expenditure up front, and then fingers crossed, hoping that what you purchased is going to create that return for you. So this subscription model is a terrific way not only to simplify the buying, but it also matches the value capture from the customer with the payment structure. That's terrific for customers, but I can tell you as investors in our company, it's also terrific. These are very high margin. We start, as I'm saying here, 60% gross margin on that full bundle just with the first application. As time goes on, and as we're gathering more of that data and driving more application adoption, not only do we see customer revenue continue to increase over time, but we also see increase in those gross margins. The traction that we're getting with this business model has been extraordinary here in these early years as we're going to market. So like I said before, we're starting with a basic application around indoor air quality. We chose that one because we feel that it's actually the most critical for any business or any building starting on a digitalization journey. So it's critical. We think of indoor air quality a lot of times like the vital signs for the building. There are a lot of insights we get from measuring things like temperature and CO2, humidity, volatile organic compounds, and things like that. They're great proxies for a lot of other things that are going on in the building, and they're really great health indicators. And so we started there. We began in the K through 12 market segment. There were a lot of reasons we felt that K through 12 was the most attractive of the commercial market opportunity. And so we've already begun penetrating that market with significant school districts already signed up as customers of ours. As we continue to evolve our business, and particularly this summer and going into the fall, we're expanding into the manufacturing sector. We will be leading in with indoor air quality. And so you can see some of the pilots. Actually, one of the customers, Crayola, is a customer that not only just recently signed up, but has also just recently expanded the scope of their engagement with us as well. Other pilots with some named companies. But what we're doing at this stage is setting up these pilots to really understand more about the use case, and then eventually continue to expand in commercialization later this fall. We'll also be entering the hospitality market. So the way we're attacking it and the way we're going to market is really starting with this number one most critical application around air quality, entering K through 12 first, expanding into manufacturing and hospitality. And then as we get into the next year and the year after, we'll continue to expand into these verticals, continue our geographic expansion, but also look to implement new technologies around artificial intelligence and metaverse. And like I also said in the beginning, partnerships are absolutely critical to our growth. We just put an announcement out yesterday about our partnership with TELUS. So TELUS Network Sensors actually represents probably one of the best examples of how our innovation and our enablement on the connectivity side is really helping to bring forth unbelievable technology from our partner TELUS. TELUS has developed state-of-the-art, best-in-class air quality sensors. And so they're relying on our connectivity service because it is a unique value-added offering around connectivity. They really value the idea of very low cost and being able to transmit signals 10 years and go through barriers and all of those great things. But the other part of this partnership that makes it so great for us is that in our Delphi 360 platform, we're implementing TELUS's sensors into our platform. So it really represents an opportunity that's terrific for TELUS. It's terrific for us. It's a great partner to have. And as this opportunity continues to evolve over time, both companies are actually growing and innovating together. And so to a large degree, these are two early stage companies that have great innovation that are actually helping each other become even better innovators. And so we love these kinds of deals. Stay tuned. We'll be announcing another such deal with another company very shortly. But these are the kinds of things that when I talk about transformation, a journey of transformation to a journey to disruption, it's the combination of these things. It's what we do best. It's our superpowers. It's our critical asset, crown jewel asset, those capabilities, solving problems for customers, but then finding like-minded companies that we could be innovating with. This is absolutely critical to the strategy. And again, another reason why we believe we're at this stage where we're truly looking for disruption. And so as I wrap up the webinar part and we shift over to the Q&A, I just want to say that, number one, it's always a great pleasure for me to talk about IotaComm. It really represents the major core of my life, and being able to shepherd this company through this journey has really become a life mission for me. I believe very strongly in my team. I believe that we have the assets that position us for strategic control in tremendously large and very lucrative markets. We have great partnerships. We have great supporters in the investors who've been with us. And we're looking to invite more of you to join the community, join the journey. And so I want to finish by just saying thank you to everyone who gave us this opportunity. And now we're going to turn it over to the Q&A.
Okay, great. Thanks, Terrence. We already got a bunch of questions in the chat, so we'll get started here. First question, who are your competitors and what sets you apart from them?
So I'm going to characterize our competition in two different categories. Let's think of the legacy building management systems, Honeywell, Johnson Controls, Siemens, et cetera. These represent the legacy of the industry that we're looking to disrupt. And so it's formidable competition. The way that we look to try to address that competition, to figure out the best way that we can augment what we do. Because what we do, consider the whole data analytics and all of the artificial intelligence and simulations and digital twins and things where we're headed. Those are not things that those building management systems can do. Building owners today that really are experiencing the problems around those three C's, and particularly the one around culture, believe that it is their job to try to extract as much as they can out of those legacy systems. So for us, it really is about going in with a message and getting them to think a little bit differently about their organizations and saying, look, those are great technologies. Those are a foundation for how you're operating your building, but a different way of looking at it, kind of a new way of looking at it, leveraging data-driven insights to be able to achieve all of that incremental value in terms of productivity and health and safety. And so as we address the competition around existing systems and existing automation, we show that we are a value-added layer. On the other side are early stage companies that are innovating around the different aspects of what we do. So we see some companies that are innovating around the connectivity part of it. We see folks that are innovating around more the data analysis part of it. Really not seeing a lot of companies that are getting that being that primary source of data and then leveraging the analytics. And that to us is absolutely critical to the long-term strategy. Data is an asset. Yeah, as we're gathering data from different sensors, that's an asset that the customer owns. But it's also an asset that IotaComm owns. And what IotaComm is able to do in gathering that real-time streaming data is we're able to build on those new emerging models around artificial intelligence and metaverse and even digital asset strategies. And so I talked before about having strategic control around our spectrum, but you can't go back in time and gather real-time data. And so as we're continuing to build our database across new customers, that becomes a bigger differentiator from companies that are just looking to advance more on the analytics side. So I do see competition from both sides, but we do believe that number one, the licensed spectrum, number two, those core capabilities, number three, driving insights for customers, but then also capturing that data back in as an asset of additional strategic control, ultimately what helps us not only become a leader, but maintain that leadership position.
Okay, great. Here's one about our partners. What are you guys doing with Crayola specifically?
So Crayola is a customer. They were concerned around air quality, particularly around health and safety. That's probably the most prominent of the value propositions for us. Cost savings is definitely, like for a business, that's kind of a given. It's okay, definitely has to have some value, financial value proposition associated with it. But one of the biggest drivers is increased awareness around health and safety. And so I give Crayola a lot of credit for being way out in front and looking at not just simply maintaining compliance. Like organizations have all kinds of regulations and compliance around health and safety for their employees. But for certain organizations that have a culture of continuous improvement, getting this data was very, very critical to Crayola. They started in one facility, we've expanded to 3. We think that this is one of our great, I didn't say it this way in the presentation, but kind of that land and expand type of strategy, where once the connectivity is in, it becomes a part of their infrastructure. We're also coming in with the first application. That's great. But we also want to continue coming in with the second, the third, the fourth application, and then really leverage all of the data to continue to drive more value for each of those customers. So while Crayola is a great standout for us right now, as we enter the manufacturing market, we do think that there are going to be a lot more companies like them. And we're very, very thankful for the opportunity they gave us.
Great. Okay. Next one here, kind of 2 combined in one. What is the value of their spectrum assets and how does it create a moat for the business? If you can kind of combine that with what problem exactly does your solution solve from a spectrum standpoint, but also from an application standpoint, and why is it important to the market?
Yeah, so The type of connectivity we do falls into this realm called low power wide area network. I throw that out because as we tell our story, I think it's really important for our shareholders to understand what's different between us and broadband. Okay, so 5G, LTE. Okay, if you've ever heard those terms, those are applied to broadband wireless connectivity. We're in a slightly different realm. And so low power wide area network connectivity has been around. It operates though on unlicensed spectrum. So if you think about baby monitors or your remote garage door opener, you know, the wireless spectrum that those devices are communicating on, those are unlicensed frequencies. So no one has exclusive right to using them. So the applications that have been developed, and we're using those frequencies now as well. But the applications that have been developed on those are fine. But more and more companies are actually starting to use those radio waves. And what's beginning to happen now is that the service level on using unlicensed frequencies for communication is starting to decrease. And so when you're a commercial customer and you're talking about connectivity as a part of your infrastructure, that's not really a risk you want to take on, that the connectivity that you're using might be compromised as time goes on. And that's one of the challenges around Wi-Fi also. Commercial building owners can control the use of Wi-Fi that is also unlicensed frequencies. But that reliability has been one of the things that's really impaired applications like ours going to market. So it definitely has value today, but over the intermediate and long term, the value of our licensed spectrum as it pertains to the customer only increases. That's awesome news for us as shareholders, is that now we've got a critical asset. As I said, it's worth a substantial amount of money, just largely because of its potential and because of its scarcity. But now if we're leveraging that asset to create a competitive moat that drives even more value and more cash flows because of customer adoption, that only increases the value of that asset. So it's one of the really cool nuances in our business model, is that yes, free cash flow is what companies want to experience. That's how you drive enterprise value. But what's happening is while we're driving free cash flows and driving enterprise value, you're also seeing the value of our asset increasing over that same time period. So it's really a great multiplier effect in our business model. But it's only important because it creates a much better user experience and a lot of protection, strategic control as we go into the smart building and smart city markets.
Okay, kind of a follow-up question to that people are having here. Explain the specific methodology or market comps used to support that $100 million valuation. And if you, not that you will, but if you tried to sell the spectrum assets right now, how much would an independent third party pay for it?
The valuation is based on a third party valuation that we had done as of our year end, which is May 31st, but as of last year. And so the methodology for this is based on those future cash flows. It did take into account the current use case for it. It is a greenfield method approach. There aren't true comps for this spectrum that exist in the market. There's never been an auction or a secondary sale of 800 megahertz spectrum like this one. I know T-Mobile did a transaction recently around their 800, but this 800 megahertz spectrum is very different from that 800 megahertz spectrum.
Okay, next one is, where will you be in the next 12 to 18 months? What does success look like for you in this time frame?
Yeah, we'll be, from a financial standpoint, the company will be approaching break even. We think that threshold is roughly in the 6 to 7 million revenue amount, and I think we'll certainly surpass that by the 18th month. The second thing is that we will have successfully penetrated the K through 12 market. Right now, we're seeing those indications happening now by the size of our pipeline, and we also will be fully commercialized in manufacturing and hospitality. Thirdly, we will have made significant advances on actually implementing artificial intelligence and metaverse as a part of our Delphi 360 platform. So very quickly, and that's really the place we are right now, we're just moving from that journey of transformation to that journey of disruption. And so all of these things really start to happen very, very quickly for us. So expect to have a thriving business financially, one that has penetrated successfully multiple very large markets, and then thirdly, implementing the best of technology to truly be on the cutting edge and win the race that will already be leading by that time.
Okay, kind of following up on that too. Can you talk about the specific traction that you're seeing today in schools and manufacturing segments?
Yeah, so the thing that's great about K through 12 is the fact that their biggest value proposition is around the health and safety side, and unlike many other segments, at least we expect, they're actually willing to spend more to provide more health and safety. And I guess as a parent, I'm very happy to hear that that we don't say, well, the spaces aren't going to be as healthy because unfortunately it costs us a little bit more to make them healthy and safe. So K through 12 has really been a terrific market for us. The other thing before I go on explaining that is that these are new markets. These are nascent. There's an education curve that's been taking place in how we approach these markets. That's why we're very, very careful on how we penetrate them. There's a lot of work that goes in ahead of time. The thing that I feel great about with K through 12 is that we've been at it for a couple of years now, and seeing the breakthrough happening just over the last 6 months, seeing the conversion rate starting to increase, seeing the adoption increasing a little bit quicker, seeing people much more receptive to really when we go in and challenge the conventional wisdom around the existing systems and how well they're working for them. So a lot of it is in response to how our customer is reacting to us. Manufacturing is going to probably end up being our biggest market segment. Much more complex. K through 12, again, much more heavily focused on health and safety, maybe even to the detriment of return on investment. But in manufacturing, number one, much more complex operations. Number two, definitely bottom line focused. Certainly a lot of emphasis on health and safety. And so that's why right now we're still in that early phase of fully going to market in K through 12. And that's why what we're learning from Crayola, Sandy Alexander was another manufacturer that's on that slide, B. Braun, we're in discussions with now. So these are all part of an iterative process where we truly want to understand where is the low-hanging fruit for us as we enter these markets, because it costs money. The use of proceeds for this offering is largely around supporting our go-to-market strategy, continuing to push the accelerator on K through 12 and entering that manufacturing and the hospitality markets.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was the next question. What are you using the $5 million crowdfunding money for? So if you want to talk more on that, you can. If not, we can move on.
Yeah, mostly go to market, but there's also network infrastructure. So right now we're in the process of putting those dual band radios on towers across the United States. There's an initial batch of 35 sites where we'll be establishing our connectivity, and we'll be going through 6-month cycles of developing out the network while at the same time going to market.
Okay. One here in the chat at 2/28/25, so end of February, you had $512,000 in cash, leaving you with a 3-month runway. Have you raised any cash yet, and to extend the runway, what are the plans here?
Yeah, so we do. Probably one of the best, I'm going to say assets, but respectfully, one of the great aspects of our company is that we've got a tremendously loyal set of existing investors that continues to fund the business, understands the long-term goal. They have a vested interest in the business. So the crowdfunding is really an extension and augmentation of the current financing that we do continue to do. And so the idea is we want to get crowdfunding done as quickly as possible. That ultimately gives us much more runway. But during that interim, to answer that question, we've been continued to be supported by our existing investors. And we are starting to see more cash flow coming from customers.
Got it. Okay. Your debt provider, AIP, is owed quite a bit of money. Is it the entirety of your 800 megahertz spectrum played against this debt?
So the value of the asset certainly far surpasses the amount that's owed to AIP. AIP has been a very long time, very loyal, very supportive investor for us. During a period during COVID, when things got a little bit difficult in raising money, AIP represented the investor of last resort, along with many of our existing loyal investors. I view that note for what it is. Firstly, I'm not going to characterize it any differently than being a senior secured note, but it's got long maturity date. It's got an accruing 6% interest rate associated with it. So what we asked them to do was create a much more shareholder-friendly structure for that note, which we finalized sometime early, about a little over a year ago. I see AIP as nothing but another value-added partner who's been there to support the company through all of its transformation stage and has been fully supportive of everything we're doing going into the disruption journey.
Cool. Okay. What kind of exit or liquidity event are we building toward, or is this a very long-term hold?
That is a great question. Might have come from one of our existing investors too. So we get that all the time. We're building the company to be a thriving company. We have short-term pressures like everyone does. What we try to do is accept the fact that while it took AT&T and Verizon and the cell carriers a few decades ultimately to get to the tremendous cash flow generators that they are today, that is likely on the connectivity part of our business what it looks like. It is a longer term infrastructure play. The beauty of those infrastructure plays is that they become embedded and become tremendous cash cows for us later. So that just remember that part of it. The data part of our business, think of that as the sizzle. Okay, that's where you really start experiencing hyper growth. That's where an inflection point comes in our business. So what we're trying to build is a company that can actually generate options for near-term exit. And how do you do that? You execute on the plan that I just laid out. Get the spectrum, commercialize the spectrum, penetrate markets, lead markets, large ones, do it at a substantial profit, protect your moat, and that's where we are right now. As we start really proving the model, okay, so for financial people, as we bring down the discount rate, as we bring down the risk, as we prove the business model, as we're doing right now, that becomes attractive for an exit strategy. And so what we're doing in the short term is trying to position ourselves for truly what is the best alternative, the best option, the best choice for our shareholders. Okay, so it could be in the form of an IPO, it could be in the form of a large strategic, it could be a buyout, it could be private equity. All of the good news is that we still have to execute on this short-term plan. We don't get to any of them without continuing doing what we're doing. The question is, what does the long term look like from there? And how does that factor into a decision around either a sale or an IPO. So I don't mean to give a complex answer here, but the idea is to build for all, because whatever you're doing, whether it's an IPO or whether it's an acquirer, someone is going to be looking at what that future looks like. And so it's really important for us to make sure that we've got a very solid long-term strategy. So as the CEO, even of a small company, I'm looking, 12 months, 18 months down the road for sure, but I'm looking 15 and 20 years down the road as well, because ultimately that's what the exit strategy is. Someone buying into that long-term strategy. There are some things that are outside of our control. An IPO, I don't control the markets. If we were looking at IPO today, I'd say that it's a little bit of a treacherous time for an early stage growth company to be going public. But at the same time, we'll see. We're prepared for it. Our audits are PCAOB audit, which means they would qualify for a public listing. The share price meets the criteria for NASDAQ, our shareholder equity, all of the other listing requirements are there. We have independents on the board. And so we're prepared for any of those. But just to give you a very simple answer, the board of directors is looking at what is ultimately going to be in the best interest of the shareholder when those options become available to us, and we will pull the trigger on them.
Okay, great. There's a couple here about Delphi 360. Is Delphi 360 patented? If not, what is the barrier for entry for a platform like this?
No, there's not a patent on the Delphi 360 platform, but that's a great question. There are IP strategy opportunities for us around our dual band radio. So that's first. One of the things that we have to respect there is that the foundational technology is an existing open standard called LoRaWAN, but around it, there are opportunities for us on the hardware side. But as it pertains to Delphi, there are ways. So I don't know that there are a lot of opportunities for just simply a cloud-based data analytics platform around IP, and it'd be maybe even questionable about how much of it truly is protectable, even if you can write a patent on it. But our strategy is more of one that's probably more grounded in the connectivity in relation to Delphi 360. So we think that there are some great opportunities around intellectual property that are part of our hardware strategy that also help create value for us on the Delphi 360 platform. The other aspect to it that I mentioned before, that data, the data that we're gathering from our customers, we have rights to, okay? And so when I talk about artificial intelligence, let's say, how do you implement artificial intelligence? So any of you are familiar with ChatGPT, you could go in there and you can bang away on the keyboard and you're getting access essentially to everything that's been published on the internet. Well, that's great. But the value that we're building is that we have unique data. We have proprietary data. It's data that's being gathered off of our sensors. And so how did those insights, what does that real-time data look like in the context of a ChatGPT, let's say? And so that unique data becomes a proprietary intangible asset of IotaComm. And it's not just the raw data, it's all those insights from it that we're uniquely positioned to be able to do. So just think about the metadata, the findings that we can develop off of it, the insights, being able to baseline, being able to say, okay, across an entire portfolio of K through 12 buildings, here's what indoor air quality looks like. Here's how it changes with outdoor air quality. Here's how it changes on seasons. Here's how it changes relative to occupancy. Here's how it changes when there's an event versus the school being empty. Like all of those insights are things that are unique to us. Engaging our customers and even sharing their proprietary data. Okay, so it doesn't have to be the raw student data, but student activity, their metadata, anonymized for the people, that's great insight for us as well. So that access to that unique data, and as we're executing on our plan, becomes another asset that we can monetize. I'm talking about monetizing in terms of new data models around artificial intelligence, but 5 years from now, there might be a whole new use case for it, a whole new data technology that can leverage it. And so that really is, I'd say, the strongest around IP. So number one, around hardware, extending that for Delphi 360. So that's number one. Number two, around the data itself. That is another aspect of building that intellectual property.
Okay, great. Here we have, this one's similar to it. You say for facilities, market, Honeywell, etc., as legacy competitors. I have not seen a use case comparison of how the IotaComm/Delphi 360 system compares to these competitors. Are there marketing materials available or planned to drive home the benefits to the user?
So I'm sorry, ask that again, Francesco. I don't understand. Am I comparing to?
I guess he's comparing it to Honeywell and other legacy system competitors. Do we have marketing materials that kind of show our benefit versus them?
We embed it as part of our presentation. Let me explain it a little bit, maybe a little bit better. It's an adjacent competitor. We don't do what they do. They don't do what we do. But sometimes that adjacency is, some people think maybe good enough, right? To be able to do set points on thermostats, to be able to set at, turn on the HVAC at 8 o'clock in the morning and shut it off at 6 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday. Okay, those things we don't do. On the other hand, gathering data to drive a healthier building or to adjust those set points differently to actually optimize for energy use, they don't do. There's overlap though. I mean, if you're the building operator, you might say, I'm good enough with set points at 8 to 6. And that's where, when I talked about our positioning, there's a competition for space, there's a competition for budget, but as far as the capabilities are concerned, there really aren't head to head. So it's just more I answered that question of more of the threat to adoption as opposed to head to head feature competition. I hope that explains it a little more, and whoever it was or anyone on the call, if you have questions, feel free to reach out and email me. I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. Given that IotaComm has no current material revenue and there's no historical monetization of licensed 800 megahertz spectrum, how do you ensure that the assumptions fed into the Greenfield DCF weren't too overly optimistic or arbitrary? What third-party appraisal firm did the valuation?
Just to be totally candid, they are. This is you're valuing an early stage company on future cash flows. The benefit you get, well, first, we're very candid about our business, and management does not take lightly what we project. So firstly, but as it pertains to the spectrum, that was a third party who put an opinion on the valuation, and that opinion supported an auditor's opinion for the carrying value of the spectrum on our balance sheet. So to the extent that helps, but I won't sit here and say that there isn't an arbitrary management-driven influence in the projected cash flows and revenues. I mean, that is what it is. We are, as with any company, the source for those. Change that, start generating some cash flow, and then we'll have more historicals to be able to point to. But right now, I can't explain around the fact that we are still an early stage company.
Okay.
Hence the opportunity. And the valuation.
What about revenue here? The revenue fell from 308,000 to in 2022 to 84,000 in 2023. Why the drop?
Yeah, that was tied to a legacy business. There was revenue that we shed that was tied to a legacy business. So that's why the difference.
That's maybe one more here about potential here. Let's see. How can your current investors assist in making introductions to prospective customers? Is there an opportunity to make any incentive compensation for those introductions?
Yeah, look, definitely. Like I said before, the relationships with our existing stakeholders has been one of the most sacred blessings that I've personally had in running the business. Flat out, going above and beyond, continuing to refer business. The success of companies like this is in its relationships. Any company, you don't make it alone. You make it because you've got people that have a vested interest and care about you and want to bring value. Whether that's investing, referring an investor, referring a customer, referring a partner, we are 100% wide open to it. We have a contact mechanism through our website. If you don't have any of our contact information, there's an investors@IotaComm email. You can email anything non-CF related. Feel free to reach out to us. We're open, receptive, and humbled and grateful for any referral to us.
Okay, great. Last one here is, I'm a farmer in South Dakota. I have a Reinke and TNL center pivot irrigation system along with soil moisture probes. Can I get my pivots and probes set up with Delphi 360?
Yes, let's talk. It might need different sensors. I'd like to learn a little bit how you're connecting those. But definitely, LoRaWAN is great for our agriculture. There are so many opportunities for our Delphi 360 platform and the connectivity we have. We've stuck kind of to what we're doing, but agriculture comes up often for us. And so, in the context of wanting to always explore opportunities, absolutely, we would love to explore that with you. We had one recently, Francesco, was it around
fire detection? Yeah, wildfires,
right?
Yeah, and the national parks.
Yeah,
that's all the questions. Yeah, that's all the questions we had.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We have still around 40 people. I think we're roughly everyone stayed on. I just want to say, thank you. It truly is an honor to have the opportunity to talk about IotaComm to all of you. It's also an honor to be able to invite new folks to become part of a journey. We have roughly 600 investors that have been part of the journey with us over the last, when you put the prior company into the equation, goes back almost probably a little over 10 years. And so the aggregation of that spectrum was a big lift. The completion of the technology, like a lot of it took a lot of folks being part of it. You're coming in right now where we're truly transforming the business, or I should say transitioning from the transformation stage, transforming that spectrum from push to talk to IoT. That's a big deal. It's a change of a use case of a US resource. Our little company here is doing that, transforming how buildings think of themselves from a data-driven standpoint as opposed to just simply set it and forget it. Those are transforming big industries. We're transforming the places where we all work and where we all play. And we invite every single one of you to even be a small part of our journey. So it's wonderful to have you on. Hope to get to know all of you. Thank you for coming. This has been a great experience. And thanks again to my team and to the Dealmaker team. It's a tremendous experience. Thank you very much.